Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Walk and Talk. Is it the second episode that I am recording today? Yes, it is. Does that mean it's not going to be as good? Absolutely not. Wash your mouth out. I actually think that today's episode is one that is going to feel like a bit of a game changer for a lot of you because we're talking about something that I think every single dog owner is, at the very least, just a little bit interested in, because we all fantasize about those lush, relaxed, off lead walks through the woods with our dogs, don't we? Do we? Do we do that? Do we all do that? Is it just me that loves those walks so much? Anyway, right. Let's stop faffing about. What are we talking about today? We are talking about recall. We are going to look at one of those most basic but also essential behaviors, in my opinion, that everybody wants, but certainly not everybody has. And hopefully, we're going to look at it in a way that perhaps you've never quite considered it before, because I like to do that where I can. Google can tell you to call your dog's name and then give them a piece of ham over and over again. But I think that you listen to this podcast because you want something just a little bit more than that. And so that's what I hope to deliver today. So, my goal with this episode is to basically address this topic in a really practical, grounded, science backed way, of course, that is going to give you 5 things that you can walk away with and start doing today, basically, like literally on your next walk, that will start shifting your dog's recall almost immediately. So, are we excited? Yes, I can hear you all popping the fizz as we speak. So, okay, I just want to say this up front. Okay, recall is not just about teaching your dog to come back when you call them. Mic drop. Okay, have we recovered from that? So, recall is also about lots of other things. It's about decision making under distraction, it's about reinforcement history, it's about emotional regulation and nervous system state. And maybe most importantly, it's about value and where the perceived value is. So, if your dog knows what the recall cue is, but doesn't deliver on it, doesn't do it, doesn't follow it, then this episode is hopefully going to help you understand exactly why and what you can do about it. So, let's then start with a quick reframe. So, most people basically approach recall like it's a command, right? They think, my dog should come back because I said that word. I said the word that means the thing, so they should do that thing. But from your dog's perspective, recall is not a command. It is never a command. It is actually a choice. It is always a choice. And every single time, without fail, that you call your dog, they are subconsciously asking themselves one very simple question. Well, look, they're not asking themselves a question because they're not capable of that, but they kind of are. Stick with me. Basically, that question is going back to the human worth it in this moment compared to what I am doing right now at this moment that I've heard that cue? And spoiler alert, if the answer is, well, not really, no, then they won't come back. And it's not because they just have a stubborn personality or because they're just randomly ignoring you. It's because the reinforcement value is not high enough in that moment. So, everything we're going to talk about today is basically about stacking the odds in your favor so that choosing you becomes the obvious, easy, or dare I say it, automatic decision for your dog. Okay, so tip number 1, you need to stop poisoning your recall cue. And actually, I usually find that this one is basically the fastest win for most people. And to be fair, it can perhaps be the most confronting aspect of this as well, because a lot of dogs don't really have a recall problem generalized. They have a recall cue problem. So basically, if your dog has heard their recall word, like you shout come or you shout here, or maybe you just shout their name over and over and over again in situations where they didn't come back, they didn't respond, then that cue is no longer clean. So, in learning theory terms, we would say it has become poisoned, basically, which essentially means the cue has a long history now to your dog of being irrelevant or ignored, or even in some cases predicting something negative, like the end of their fun, or being put back on the lead, or being taken home, or being shooed away from that other fun dog over there, whatever it is, right, that your dog loves. And how do we train our dogs? How do they learn anything? They learn through associative learning, which is basically, the same underlying process described in classical conditioning, right? So if your recall cue then has been repeatedly paired with a loss of freedom or feelings of frustration or just repeated failure, then the cue itself starts to carry that emotional weight to your dog, right? So essentially, one of the fastest ways to improve your recall is to stop using the cue that currently isn't working. And I know that can feel counterintuitive, but continuing to use a cue that gets ignored is just rehearsing the exact behavior that you don't want and continuing to reinforce the association with that cue that you don't want. So instead, what I want you to do is introduce a brand new, totally fresh recall cue. And it really needs to be a word that your dog hasn't heard before in any kind of meaningful way. And truly, you honestly can do whatever you like here. Like you can make it make sense and say something like close or with me or something, that's actually related to the task at hand, as long as you haven't used it before. Or you can be a total maverick if you want and decide you're just going to shout the word grapefruit from now on. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because your dog doesn't know what grapefruit means. You're going to teach them what it means. So, as long as it's currently clean and neutral to your dog, you can say anything. The only thing that matters is what we're going to do with that word next, right? Which brings me to tip number 2, which is building a powerful reinforcement history. And no, that doesn't just mean using better, smellier, more expensive treats. I know that most people think improving recall just means getting better treats, basically. And yes, reinforcement quality does matter. Of course it does. But what matters far more is something called reinforcement history. And this is a concept from behavioral science that basically means the more a behavior has been reinforced in the past, the more likely it is to happen again in the future. So essentially, if your dog has 500 repetitions, let's say, of ignoring the recall and 50 repetitions of being rewarded for responding to the recall, guess which behavior is stronger? Obviously, you all shouted, ignoring the recall. Good, that's correct. So instead of thinking, okay, what treats should I use for this? I want you to think, how can I get more successful repetitions of recall successfully happening every single day? Because recall is simply built in hundreds of tiny, easy, straightforward wins that just get repeated enough times. So, in honor of keeping it practical, here's something you can literally start doing today. You can start doing it as soon as you finish listening to this episode. Just start recalling your dog with whatever you've chosen, start shouting the word grapefruit in situations where you already know they're going to come back. Like maybe they're even already doing it. So you're in the house, you're in the garden, or you're on a really quiet walk where there's nothing going on and they're already heading towards you. Like they're already interested in you. And every single time that successfully happens, you reinforce that recall response. And I want you to remember that reinforcement is not just about what you give your dog, it's about how it makes them feel. So don't just use giving them food, but you might want to like mix it up with movement and engagement as well. So maybe tap into your dog's chase drive and run away from them for a few steps and then toss the treat out even further in front of you for them to chase after that, or throw it into the grass for them to sniff it out and find it, or throw it up in the air for them to catch it, or bowl it along the ground, or maybe don't use food, maybe take a flirt toy and animate it if you've, got a dog like a terrier. Don't just think of the thing that you are delivering, the item of food or whatever, as the whole reward, but remember that the delivery itself can be rewarding as well. How can you give it more energy? How can you make the whole experience even more enjoyable for your dog? And the more your dog experiences recall as something that leads to good things consistently, the faster it strengthens. Okay, tip number 3 is use the Premack principle to your advantage. Have you heard of this before? The Premack principle? If not, buckle up. I'm going to tell you what it is. So, there's a concept in behavioral science called the Premack principle. Personally, I think some people try to make this sound a lot more complicated than it actually is because I think it's really basic. So here's hoping I don't do that. And this is really straightforward. But it basically states that more probable behaviors can reinforce less probable behaviors. So, in simpler terms, basically what that's saying is your dog can earn access to the thing that they want by first doing the thing that you want. So instead of always recalling your dog and just ending whatever fun they're having out there in the big wide world, we flip it and we recall them and then we send them straight back to the fun. So imagine this, right? You're out of the park and your dog catches sight of another dog across the way, and you know what's going to happen next because your dog loves dogs. Now, instead of just panicking and shouting their recall when they're already hightailing it over there to see this other dog, you catch this, you catch that look in their eye, you call them early, they turn back to you, they respond to that cue, and you then mark it, reward it, and then you say, okay, go play. Or whatever way you might release your dog so that they understand they're free to go. And you would just release them to go and greet that other dog. Side note, obviously, don't do this with dogs that you don't know, a dog at the park that you've never seen before. Always make sure you have the other dog owner's permission for your dog to have access to their dog, etc., etc. We all hate the dogs who bowl over uninvited and mess up our training, don't we? And I don't want to be responsible for justifying any more of those types of encounters in the world. But if, like me, your dog maybe has a few doggy friends that you know and you're familiar with because you see them at the park every day, and everyone has always been happy for the dogs to meet and greet and have a little play while the humans have a little natter, then that kind of setup is ideal for this, because by releasing your dog to something fun this way, you've gone and turned recall into the thing that unlocks what they want, which means recall stops competing with the environment and starts working with it. And when you can do this consistently, you will start to notice something really interesting. You are likely to see that your dog starts responding a lot faster and with more enthusiasm because they're no longer worried or anticipating losing access to the world or to anything. It's magical. Okay. Tip number 4, Train recall as a pattern, not just a one-off event. Now, I think this is something that most people probably completely overlook because actually, recall isn't just a single behavior, but it's part of a longer behavioral pattern. And as we know, dogs learn patterns incredibly quickly and easily. So if your recall currently always looks like this, right? Your dog runs off, you call them with their recall cue, they come back, the lead goes on, the fun stops, off you go. That pattern or sequence becomes very predictable, and your dog just learns coming back equals the end of freedom. So instead, we want to create unpredictable but always rewarding patterns. So, for example, you might give your recall cue, call your dog back, reward them, walk off together for a second, then release them again, then call them again and reward them and do a bit of play, and then release them again, and so on and so forth. Because what you're doing here by doing it this way is building something called variable reinforcement. I talked about it last week, didn't I, in last week's episode, because it's one of the most powerful ways to strengthen behavior, basically. It's the same principle that makes things like slot machines so addictive. And well, look, I won't go into all of that again because I did go into it in detail in last week's episode, how it works, why it works, all that stuff, why it's so effective. So if you didn't listen last week, go back and give that episode a listen. It's very interesting, if I do say so myself. But essentially, your dog never quite knows what they're going to get, but they know that it's always worth coming back to find out. That's the power of unpredictable patterns like that. And finally, tip number 5 is regulate your dog's nervous system first. Now, this sounds a bit airy-fairy, but I think truly this is the one tip that kind of really starts to separate your average Googleable dog training from higher level training, because recall, like anything else, never happens in a vacuum. It's always happening in relation to one real life situation or another, right? And if your dog is over aroused or hyperstimulated or in a high state of chase drive, whatever it is, their ability to respond to cues, and that's absolutely any cue, by the way, any instruction, it's not just recall specific, that ability drops dramatically. And it isn't really disobedience, it's basically just neurobiology, because when arousal increases, the brain starts to shift away from the prefrontal cortex, which is basically like the part of the brain responsible for all your sensible, thoughtful decision making, and into more reactive, instinct driven parts of the brain. You'll have heard me talk about Captain Panic before. It's basically going there. So, expecting a sensible or reliable recall in that state without training for it first is like trying to have a rational conversation with someone when they're in the middle of a panic attack. I don't know if you have ever watched I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, right? I don't know how many countries this show actually exists in, but I'm in the UK and Ant and Dec have been presenting this show since the dawn of time, where they send celebrities to the jungle and they make them endure horrific experiences, all in the name of entertainment and earning their dinner each night. And you know, when they have to do a trial, so they have to do some awful thing to earn their dinner, and they get put inside like some kind of hideous box or a coffin or a tank or something, and then they just get covered in fish guts and snakes and spiders and rats and God knows what other horrors, and they're utterly terrified, most of them, and they're an absolute mess. Imagine pulling up a chair beside that tank at that moment and sitting down and saying to whoever is inside, okay, so your mortgage has just come up for renewal, and I would like to talk you through your options and, decide the best path forward together. Like, that information, that conversation is not going to be well received or processed or maybe even acknowledged at that time, is it? So basically, one of the fastest ways to improve your recall is to stop putting your dog in situations where they can't succeed yet because of over arousal. Like they're not even capable of accessing a response because they're so overstimulated. And instead, focus on working in lower arousal environments, building a gradual, planned out exposure to distraction over time, and investing in engagement first and building that up. So this way, you can both bank a load of successful reps because remember, tip number 2, reinforcement history, that's what you want. And then in the meantime, outside of anything specific to recall training itself, you can gradually work on your dog's ability to cope with higher arousal, to get more fluent with arousal transitions, and to build the skill of staying responsive even when they're excited. And then you can gradually translate those skills across and into your recall training over time. Okay, so right, let's bring it all together then. So basically, here are the 5 things I think are going to be your allies when it comes to fixing up your dog's recall. Number 1, you need to clean up your recall cue. Number 2, build reinforcement history. Number 3, learning about how to use the environment as a reward. Number 4, creating powerful behavior patterns. And number 5, start to work with your dog's nervous system rather than against it. So I truly think it's entirely possible for you to make yourself something that is consistently worth responding and returning to from your dog's perspective, with just a little bit of consistency and intention and just generally smarter, neater, tidier training habits. And if recall is something that's really important to you or something that you are actively working on right now or planning to get going with, my Racing Recall Training Pack is available for instant download at listendogtraining.com, and it will literally walk you through stage by stage, exercise by exercise, how to train a really powerful and reliable recall cue to your dog. And you can literally get started today if you want to. You can get started in 5 minutes' time. I will leave a link in the show notes. Otherwise, I think that's plenty enough from me. I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully, you've got a few practical changes you can make and things you can start trying out today if you want to, just from this episode. And if you have any questions, as always, you can always come and slide into my DMs on the gram. I'm at Listen Dog Training. Otherwise, I hope you have a truly fabulous week, and I will see you same time next week for another episode of The Walk and Talk.